The smell of gasoline and expensive cologne filled the small, windowless room. Sienna Brooks coughed, tasting blood on her lip, as the burlap sack was ripped from her head. She wasn't in her apartment anymore. She was zip-tied to a steel chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. A man in a tailored charcoal suit stood before her, holding a photograph, not of her, but of a woman who looked vaguely like her. "Stop playing games," the man hissed, his accent thick and Russian. "Tell us where your brother is, or we send him your fingers first." Sienna sobbed, confused and terrified. "I don't have a brother. I'm an only child." The man laughed, a cold, dry sound. "Lying runs in the Murphy bloodline." She froze. Murphy? That was her roommate's last name. Rain hammered against the stained glass of the third-floor apartment in downtown Chicago. It was a miserable Tuesday in November, the kind that soaked into your bones and made the city look like a watercolor painting left out in a storm. Sienna Brooks, 24 years old and currently drowning in student loans and coffee stains, was running late. "Becca, seriously, where are my keys?" Sienna shouted, overturning a pile of fashion magazines on the coffee table. "I'm going to be late for the shift at the diner, and Jerry is already looking for a reason to fire me." Becca Murphy leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping an herbal tea that smelled like dirt and money. Becca was everything Sienna wasn't: effortlessly chic, vaguely unemployed but never broke, and shrouded in a weird, aloof mystery. They had been roommates for 6 months, brought together by a Craigslist ad and desperation. "Your car is dead, remember?" Becca said, her voice smooth. She tossed a set of heavy keys through the air. Sienna caught them. They were cold, featuring a silver emblem of a raging bull. "Take the Mustang. I'm not going out tonight." Sienna hesitated. Becca's 1969 Mustang Fastback was her baby. She treated that car better than most people treated their children. "Are you sure?" "It's pouring out there. It needs a run." "Besides," Becca walked over, picking up a heavy black leather trench coat from the back of the sofa. "Take this. You're shivering, and that denim jacket you're wearing is pathetic." Sienna slipped into the leather coat. It was oversized, heavy, and smelled of tobacco and gun oil, a masculine scent that she associated with Becca's brother Dante. "Speaking of the devil," Sienna muttered as she buttoned the coat, "is your brother coming by later? Because last time he was here, he stared at me like I was a security risk." Becca stiffened slightly, though she hid it with a smile. "Dante is just protective. He's coming to pick up some paperwork. Just go, Sienna. You'll be late." Sienna grabbed her bag and bolted out the door. She didn't see the look on Becca's face as the lock clicked shut, a look of guilt and terrifying calculation. Down. On the street, the Mustang roared to life with a guttural growl that shook the pavement. Sienna loved this car. Even if she felt ridiculous driving it, it felt powerful. As she pulled out into the traffic on Wacker Drive, she turned up the radio to drown out the thunder. She didn't notice the black SUV idling 2 cars behind her. She didn't notice that it ran the red light to keep up with her. She didn't know that the license plate on the Mustang was flagged in a database that had nothing to do with the DMV and everything to do with the chaotic underworld of Chicago organized crime. Sienna was thinking about tips. She was thinking about rent. She wasn't thinking about the Volkov Bratva. She parked in the alley behind the Grind, the diner where she worked. The rain was blinding now. She killed the engine, grabbed her purse, and opened the door. As her boots hit the wet asphalt, a van screeched into the alley, blocking the exit. Before Sienna could process the noise, side doors slid open. 3 men in tactical gear poured out. She barely had time to scream before a bag was shoved over her head. Strong hands gripped her arms, lifting her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. "Secure the package," a voice growled. "We got the sister." The Mustang's engine ticked as it cooled in the rain, the only witness to the crime. Time was impossible to track. It could have been an hour. It could have been a day. The darkness inside the hood was suffocating, smelling of burlap and dust. Sienna had kicked and screamed until her throat was raw, but nobody had said a word during the transport. When the hood was finally ripped off, the light was blinding. Sienna blinked rapidly, her eyes watering. She was in a warehouse. Concrete floors, steel beams, and the distinct metallic smell of old machinery. She was tied to a chair, her wrists bound with plastic zip ties that cut into her circulation. Standing in front of her were two men. One was huge, a wall of muscle with tattoos creeping up his neck. The other was slender, dressed in a suit that cost more than Sienna's entire education. He held a lit cigarette, the smoke curling around his fingers. "Water," Sienna croaked. "Please." The man in the suit stepped forward. He had pale blue eyes and a scar running through his left eyebrow. This was Nikolai Volkov, though Sienna didn't know that yet. She only knew he looked like death. "Comfort comes after truth," Nikolai said softly. "You are comfortable in the car, yes?" "A 1969 Mustang. Registered to the Murphy estate." "My roommate!" Sienna gasped. "It's my roommate's car!" "Becca, I just borrowed it." Nikolai laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the sound of dry leaves crumbling. He reached out and touched the collar of the heavy leather trench coat Sienna was still wearing. "And this?" "Custom leather, Italian stitching. There is a monogram inside the pocket. DM, Dante Murphy." Nikolai leaned in close, his tobacco breath mixing with the smell of her fear. "Do not lie to me, little girl. You are driving the Murphy car. You are wearing the Murphy capo's coat. You are living in the Murphy safe house." "Safe house?" "It's an apartment in Lincoln Park," Sienna yelled, panic rising in her chest. "I'm Sienna Brooks. I'm a waitress. Check my wallet." The large man in the back threw her wallet onto the floor. "Empty. No ID." Sienna's blood ran cold. I must have left it in my other bag." "Convenient," Nikolai sneered. "Dante Murphy is a careful man. He hides his family. We knew he had a sister, hidden away in Europe for years. And then, suddenly, a girl appears in his apartment, driving his cars, wearing his clothes." Nikolai grabbed a handful of her hair, yanking her head back. "We have been watching the apartment for weeks. Dante comes and goes. He brings groceries. He checks the windows. He is protecting you." "Why would the Dawn of Chicago protect a waitress?" "Because he's her brother," Sienna screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Becca! Becca is his sister. I'm just the roommate." Nikolai released her, wiping his hand on a handkerchief. He signaled to the large man. "She is committed to the role. I admire that. But pain has a way of clarifying identity." "Wait, please," Sienna begged. "Call him. If you know him, call him. He'll tell you." "Oh, we will call him," Nikolai said, pulling a sleek black phone from his pocket, but not to ask for verification. "We are calling to set the price for his beloved sister's life." He dialed a number and put it on speaker. The phone rang twice. "Speak," a deep, baritone voice answered. It was Dante. Sienna recognized it immediately. It was the voice of the man who awkwardly stood in her kitchen once a week, silent and brooding. "Dante," Nikolai purred. "It has been a long time." There was a silence on the other end, a heavy, dangerous silence. "Nikolai, if you were calling me, you must have a death wish." "I have something better," Nikolai said, looking Sienna in the eyes. "I have her. The girl from the apartment. The one driving your car." Sienna screamed at the phone. "Dante, tell them! Tell them I'm not Becca." The line went dead silent. "Dante?" Nikolai taunted. "Did you hear that, fear? She is calling for you. If you touch a hair on her head." Dante's voice came through, lower now, vibrating with a rage that made the speaker rattle. "I will burn your entire city to the ground, Nikolai. I will peel the skin from your bones." "Bring me the territories on the south side," Nikolai demanded. "Tonight, or the girl dies." "Don't hurt her," Dante said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm coming." The call ended. Nikolai smiled at Sienna. See? He didn't deny it. If you were just a waitress, he would have hung up. He is coming for you, Becca, which means you are exactly who we thought you were. Sienna slumped in the chair. Dante hadn't denied it. Why hadn't he denied it? Unless admitting she was a nobody would make them kill her instantly. Or worse. He was using her as a decoy. Dante Murphy crushed the phone in his hand until the screen shattered, shards of glass digging into his palm. He didn't feel the pain. All he felt was a cold, white-hot fury that started in his stomach and spread to his extremities. He was standing in the penthouse office of The Vesper, his club. Below him, the bass of the music thumped like a heartbeat, but up here, it was silent. Boss? Enzo, his second-in-command, stepped forward. What is it? Volkov taken her, Dante said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He took Sienna. Enzo frowned. The roommate? Why? She's a civilian. He thinks she's Becca. Dante turned, walking to the wet bar and pouring a whiskey he didn't intend to drink. She was driving the Mustang. She was wearing my coat. Becca, that foolish girl. Dante slammed the glass down, shattering it. Get the car. And get the team. The heavy team, not the negotiators. The cleaners. Dante, Enzo warned. If we hit Volkov's warehouse, it's war. Full scale. The commission won't like it. I don't care about the commission, Dante roared, spinning around. He has an innocent woman. A woman who has nothing to do with this life. Or, Enzo hesitated. We tell Volkov the truth. We send him proof that she's just a waitress. He'll let her go. He wants leverage, not a random girl. You don't know, Nikolai, Dante growled, adjusting his cufflinks. If he finds out she's worthless to him, he won't let her go. He'll put a bullet in her head just to tidy up the mess. The only thing keeping her alive right now is the belief that she is my blood. Dante grabbed his shoulder holster, strapping it on over his white dress shirt. We have to play the part. I have to pretend she is my sister until I can get a gun to Nikolai's head. And Becca? Enzo asked. Dante's eyes darkened. Bring her to me. 20 minutes later, the door to Dante's office flew open. Becca was shoved inside by 2 guards. She looked terrified, her makeup smeared. Dante, Shut up, Dante said. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. The air in the room grew heavy. You gave her the car. You gave her the coat. You knew Volkov was watching. You knew the heat was on us. Becca began to cry. I just wanted one night. One night to go see my boyfriend without you knowing. I didn't think they'd take her. I thought if they saw the car leave, they'd follow it and leave me alone. You used her as bait, Dante said, stepping closer. She is a civilian, Becca. She works at a diner. She laughs at bad movies. She pays her rent on time. She is innocent. And you fed her to the wolves to sneak out for a date? I didn't mean for this to happen, Becca sobbed. If she dies, Dante said, his face inches from his sister's, it is on your soul. Get her to the safe house in the Hamptons. Lock her down. If Volkov finds out the real sister is here, Sienna is dead. Dante turned to Enzo. Load up. We're going to the docks. How are we going to play this? Enzo asked, checking the magazine of his Glock. Dante picked up a jagged shard of the glass he had broken earlier. He stared at his own reflection in it. I'm going to walk in there and negotiate for my sister, Dante said. And then, when I have hands on her, I'm going to kill every single person in that room. Dante paused. He thought of Sienna. He thought of the way she hummed when she made coffee in the morning, unaware he was listening from the hallway. He thought of her fierce independence, the way she refused his help with groceries. She was the only pure thing in his orbit, and now she was in the center of hell because of his family. Let's go, Dante commanded. Tonight, the Volkovs go extinct. The warehouse district was a graveyard of industry, a sprawling grid of rusted corrugated iron and cracked concrete located near the Calumet River. The rain had turned torrential, washing the grime of Chicago into the dark waters. Dante's convoy consisted of 3 black Escalades. They didn't sneak in. They didn't cut the lights. They rolled up to the main gate of the foundry like a funeral procession for a king. Inside the lead vehicle, Dante checked his weapon, a customized Beretta 92FS with a compensator. He holstered it, buttoned his suit jacket, and looked at Enzo. "Stay by the car," Dante ordered. "Keep the engine running. If I'm not out in 10 minutes, burn the building down with everyone inside." "And the girl?" Enzo asked quietly. "If I'm not out in 10 minutes," Dante said, his eyes devoid of light. "The girl is already dead." Dante stepped out into the rain. He didn't run. He walked with a predator's gait toward the massive sliding doors, which were already cracking open to reveal the yellow, sickly light within. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the scent of unwashed bodies and cheap tobacco. Nikolai stood in the center of the room, flanked by 6 men armed with assault rifles. Sienna was still in the chair, her head drooping, her hair plastered to her face with sweat and tears. When Dante entered, the air in the room changed. It wasn't just his size, though he was over 6 feet of broad-shouldered Italian muscle. It was his presence. He radiated a controlled violence that made the armed men shift uncomfortably. "Dante," Nikolai smiled, spreading his arms, "you are punctual. I appreciate that in a business partner." Dante didn't look at Nikolai. His obsidian eyes locked onto Sienna. He saw the bruise forming on her cheek. He saw the zip ties digging into her delicate wrists. A muscle in his jaw feathered, the only sign of the tectonic rage shifting beneath his composure. "She looks pale," Dante said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "You didn't feed her." "She was not a gracious guest," Nikolai shrugged. "She kept insisting she was a waitress. A very committed performance." "The Murphy's stubbornness is impressive." Dante walked forward. The guards raised their rifles. "Easy." Nikolai barked at his men. "Let the family reunite." Dante stopped 2 feet from Sienna. He crouched down, bringing his face level with hers. Up close, he smelled of rain, expensive scotch, and gunpowder. It was a terrifying, intoxicating scent. Sienna looked up, her eyes wide with panic. She opened her mouth to speak, to tell him again that this was a mistake. But Dante's gaze silenced her. It was intense, burning, and pleading all at once. "I told you," Dante said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper that only she could hear. He reached out, his thumb brushing the bruise on her cheek. His touch was shockingly gentle, a stark contrast to the violence surrounding them. "I told you to stay inside, Tesoro." Sienna froze. He was playing the part. "Dante," she whimpered, her voice cracking, "I want to go home. I know." He soothed, his hand moving to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her damp hair. It looked like a brotherly gesture of comfort, but his grip was firm, grounding her. "I'm going to get you out, but you need to trust me. Do exactly what I say." He stood up, his demeanor shifting instantly from protector to warlord as he turned to Nikolai. "Let her go," Dante said. "The deeds," Nikolai demanded, holding out a hand. Dante reached into his inner pocket. The guards tensed, fingers on triggers. Dante pulled out a thick envelope and tossed it onto the concrete floor between them. "The South Side distribution routes, the warehouses on 35th. It's all there. Signed over." Nikolai signaled a guard to check. The man scooped up the envelope, ripped it open, and scanned the documents. He nodded to Nikolai. "Excellent," Nikolai grinned, his gold tooth glinting. "You value family over profit. A fatal flaw, Dante, but an admirable one." "Cut her loose," Dante commanded. Nikolai pulled a knife. Sienna flinched, squeezing her eyes shut, but he only sliced the zip ties binding her wrists. "Go to your brother, little princess," Nikolai mocked. Sienna scrambled out of the chair, her legs numb. She stumbled. Dante was there instantly, catching her by the waist. He pulled her flush against his chest, his left arm wrapping around her like an iron band. She could feel his heart beating against her, cheek, slow, steady, rhythmic. He wasn't afraid. "We are leaving," Dante stated, turning his body to shield hers as he began to back away toward the exit. "One more thing," Nikolai called out. Dante stopped. He didn't turn around, but his grip on Sienna tightened. "The girl," Nikolai said, lighting a fresh cigarette. "She is very pretty. My men. They have been lonely. Since you took my territory, perhaps you leave the sister for an hour? As a bonus." The silence that followed was absolute. Sienna felt Dante's chest stop moving. He stopped breathing. Slowly, Dante turned back around. He pushed Sienna behind him, blocking her completely from their view. "What did you say?" Dante asked. His voice was no longer human. It was the low rumble of an earthquake. "I said," Nikolai laughed, "leave the girl. We return her later." "Maybe broken, but alive." Dante looked at the exit, then back at Nikolai. He had the deal. He had Sienna. He could leave. That was the smart play. That was the Don's play. But Dante Murphy was not just a Don. He was a man who lived by a code. And nobody threatened what belonged to him. And in this moment, with her trembling hand clutching the back of his jacket, Sienna belonged to him. "Sienna," Dante said, his voice calm. "Cover your ears." "What?" Sienna whispered. "Close your eyes. Cover your ears. Count to 10. "Dante, no." Dante moved with a speed that defied physics. He didn't draw his gun. He kicked the steel chair Sienna had been tied to, sending it flying through the air toward the guard on the left. In the split second of distraction, Dante drew the Beretta. Bang. 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 3 shots. 3 bodies hit the floor before the echo of the first shot had even faded. The shots were surgical, 1 to the head, 2 to the chest. "Kill him!" Nikolai screamed, diving behind a pillar. The warehouse erupted. Dante grabbed Sienna by the collar of the leather trench coat, his coat, and threw her behind a stack of industrial crates. "Stay down!" he roared. Bullets chewed up the concrete around them, sending stone shrapnel flying. Sienna curled into a ball, hands over her ears, screaming. Dante was a storm. He moved between cover, firing with terrifying precision. He wasn't spraying bullets. He was selecting targets. He was calm, efficient, a reaper in a Brioni suit. He took out the lights above them, plunging the warehouse into semi-darkness. Now, it was his world. Sienna heard footsteps rushing their position. She looked up to see a man with a machete lunging over the crates. "Look out!" she screamed. Dante didn't look. He spun, catching the man's wrist in midair, snapping the bone with a sickening crunch. He drove his elbow into the man's throat, silencing him instantly, then put 2 rounds into the darkness where the muzzle flashes were coming from. "We have to move!" Dante grabbed her hand. His palm was hot, his grip bruising. They ran. They sprinted through the gauntlet of gunfire, Dante shoving her ahead of him, using his own body to shield her back. They burst out of the warehouse doors just as the Escalade screeched forward. The rear door of the lead SUV flew open. "Get in!" Enzo shouted, firing a submachine gun from the passenger window to suppress the Russians pouring out of the building. Dante practically threw Sienna into the back seat and dove in on top of her as bullets pinged off the armored chassis. "Go! Go! Go!" Dante yelled. The SUV peeled out, tires smoking on the wet pavement, fishtailing before gripping the road and tearing away into the night. Inside the car, the silence was sudden and deafening. Sienna was gasping for air, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She lay across the leather seat, Dante hovering over her, his weight heavy. He pushed himself up, his eyes frantically scanning her body. "Are you hit? Sienna, look at me! Are you hit?" She shook her head, unable to speak, trembling violently. Dante let out a breath that sounded like a growl. He slumped back against the seat, running a hand through his hair. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time without the threat of immediate death. She was a mess. Her lip was split. Her clothes were dirty. But her eyes were blazing with something that wasn't just fear. It was adrenaline. "You," Sienna stammered, pointing a shaking finger at him. You killed those people." "They were going to kill you," Dante said flatly. He reached into a cooler built into the console and pulled out a bottle of water, cracking the seal and handing it to her. "Drink!" Sienna took the bottle, her hands shaking so hard the water splashed onto her chin. Dante watched her struggle for a second, then swore softly in Italian. He took the bottle back and held it to her lips himself, tilting it gently. "Slowly," he commanded. She drank, the cold water shocking her system. She pulled back, wiping her mouth. "You lied to them. You told them I was your sister." "It was the only way to keep you breathing," Dante said, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket and dabbing the blood on her lip. His touch was clinical, yet strangely intimate. "But now," Sienna whispered, the realization dawning on her, "now they think I'm your sister. They think I'm part of this." Dante's expression darkened. He looked out the window at the rain-streaked city blurring past them. "Nikolai knows I have a sister," Dante said grimly, "but now he has seen your face. He has seen me kill for you. To him, you are Murphy blood. If I let you go back to your apartment, you will be dead by morning." Sienna felt the blood drain from her face. "What are you saying?" Dante turned back to her, his gaze intense. "I'm saying you can't go home, Sienna. You can't go to work. You can't see your friends. You don't exist anymore." "For how long?" she asked, tears welling up again. "Until I kill Nikolai Volkov," Dante replied. "Or until he kills me." The car swerved slightly as they took a sharp turn. Sienna looked at the man beside her. He was a monster, a killer, a liar. But as she looked at the blood on his knuckles, blood he had shed to get her out of that chair, she realized something terrifying. He was the only thing standing between her and the grave. "Where are we going?" Sienna asked, her voice small. Dante unbuttoned his jacket, revealing the shoulder holster and the blood-soaked dress shirt underneath. He hadn't been hit, but he was covered in the violence of the night. "To the only place they won't look," Dante said. "My private estate. You're moving in with me." The estate was less of a home and more of a fortress carved out of limestone and paranoia. Located in a secluded enclave of Lake Forest, north of the city, it sat behind 12-foot iron gates and a perimeter of dense, dark woods. As the Escalade crunched over the gravel driveway, the rain finally began to taper off, leaving the world slick and shimmering under the security floodlights. Sienna stared out the window, her body aching, her mind a blur of trauma and exhaustion. "Welcome to Purgatory," Dante muttered as the car came to a halt in front of the massive double doors. "It looks like a museum," Sienna whispered, "or a mausoleum." "It's safe," Dante corrected. "That's all that matters." He escorted her inside. The foyer was cavernous, dominated by a split staircase and a chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion of crystal. The floors were black marble, cold enough to feel through the soles of her cheap work boots. The house was silent. Not the peaceful silence of a library, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a place where secrets went to die. "Enzo!" Dante barked, his voice echoing. "Secure the perimeter. Double the guard on the gate. No one comes in or out without my direct authorization. That includes my family." "Understood, boss." Enzo nodded, disappearing into the shadows. Dante turned to Sienna. He looked exhausted. The adrenaline of the shootout was fading, revealing the toll the night had taken. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he favored his left side slightly. "You're hurt," Sienna noted, her waitress instincts kicking in. She was used to reading people, noticing the small details. "I'm fine." Dante dismissed her concern with a wave of his hand. "Martha will show you to the guest wing. You'll have everything you need: clothes, food, toiletries." I'll have someone pick up your things from your apartment once the heat dies down." An older woman in a severe gray uniform appeared from a side door. She didn't look surprised to see a battered woman in a blood-stained leather coat standing in the foyer. "In Dante Murphy's house. This was likely a Tuesday." "Miss," Martha nodded, "follow me." Sienna didn't move. She looked at Dante. "So that's it? I'm just here indefinitely?" Dante stopped at the foot of the stairs. He turned, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "You have a choice, Sienna. You can walk out that front door right now. I won't stop you. But if you do, Volkov will have you in a trunk before you reach the end of the driveway. He thinks you are my sister. He thinks hurting you breaks me. Staying here is the only way you survive." Sienna clenched her fists. "You ruined my life." Dante didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He simply accepted the accusation as fact. "I know, and now I'm trying to save what's left of it. Get some sleep. Blank." The next morning, Sienna woke up in a bed that cost more than her college tuition. The sheets were Egyptian cotton, the pillows like clouds. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then the memory of the gunshots, the zip ties, and Nikolai's cold eyes came rushing back. She showered, scrubbing the smell of the warehouse off her skin until she was raw. She found a closet full of clothes, some with tags still on them. Becca's clothes. Dante must have had them moved here for his sister, who never visited. Sienna pulled on a pair of oversized sweatpants and a cashmere sweater. She felt like an imposter. She wandered downstairs, following the smell of coffee. She found the kitchen, a sprawling industrial space of stainless steel and granite. Sitting at the island, eating a grapefruit with a silver spoon, was Becca. Sienna froze. Becca looked up, her eyes widening. She looked perfectly put together, hair blown out, makeup flawless. As if she hadn't been the reason Sienna was nearly tortured to death 12 hours ago. "Oh my God," Becca said, putting down her spoon. "Sienna, you're okay." "Dante told me he got you out, but I was so worried." The rage that flared in Sienna's chest was hot and blinding. She walked across the kitchen. "You were worried?" Sienna asked, her voice trembling. "Of course. I felt terrible," Becca said, standing up and reaching out as if to hug her. "I had no idea they were watching the apartment. I just slap." The sound cracked through the kitchen like a pistol shot. Sienna had slapped her. Hard. Becca stumbled back, clutching her cheek, her mouth open in shock. "You selfish, spoiled brat," Sienna hissed, stepping forward. I was tied to a chair. A man with a scar held a knife to my throat. They were going to cut off my fingers because they thought I was you. Because you wanted to go on a date. I didn't know," Becca stammered, tears forming. "You knew," Sienna screamed. "You gave me the keys. You gave me the coat. You dressed me up as a decoy so you could sneak out. What is going on here?" Dante's voice thundered from the doorway. He was dressed in a fresh suit, black on black, looking every inch the Don. Becca ran to him, sobbing. "Dante, she hit me. She's crazy." Dante looked at his sister, then at Sienna. Sienna stood her ground, her chest heaving, her hand still stinging from the impact. She didn't look sorry. She looked like an avenging angel. Dante gently pushed Becca aside. He walked over to the counter, poured himself a black coffee, and took a sip. "Did she deserve it?" Dante asked Sienna calmly. "Yes," Sienna replied, chin high. Dante turned to Becca. "She's right. You deserved it." Becca gasped. "Dante, I'm your sister." "And she is the woman paying the price for your stupidity," Dante said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, low register. "Pack your bags, Becca. Enzo is taking you to the airport. You're going to the villa in Tuscany. You stay there until I tell you it's safe to return." "You're sending me away?" Becca cried. "But what about her? She's staying here." "She stays," Dante said, setting his cup down. "Because unlike you, she has nowhere else to go. And unlike you, she actually seems to understand the gravity of this life." Becca stormed out, wailing. The silence returned to the kitchen. Sienna leaned against the island, her energy suddenly drained. She expected Dante to be angry. He was a Mafia boss. Violence against his family should have been a death sentence. "You have a good right hook," Dante commented, not looking at her. "I'm sorry," Sienna muttered. "I shouldn't have." "Don't apologize," Dante interrupted. He turned to face her. "In this house, we don't apologize for defending ourselves. You were owed a debt. You collected. That is business." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. A burner. "Your old phone is gone. Trackable. Use this. It's encrypted. You can call your parents. Tell them you're on a last-minute trip. Do not tell them where you are." Sienna took the phone. Their fingers brushed. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her arm. Dante felt it too. She saw his eyes dilate slightly. "Why are you being nice to me?" Sienna asked softly. "I'm just a problem for you." Dante looked at her for a long moment, his gaze tracing the line of her jaw. "You're not a problem, Sienna. You're a responsibility. And I take my responsibilities very seriously." He checked his watch. "I have to go into the city. Do not leave the grounds. Do not open the door for anyone but me or Enzo. There are guards in the garden. If you need anything, ask Martha." He turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "And Sienna?" "Yes?" "The red dress in the closet upstairs," he said, not looking back. "Burn it. It looked terrible on Becca anyway." 2 weeks passed. The estate, initially a prison, had become a strange, silent ecosystem. Sienna fell into a routine. She avoided the West Wing, where Dante conducted his business. She spent her mornings in the massive library, reading books she had never had time for, and her afternoons in the kitchen, helping Martha cook. It turned out the Don of Chicago ate alone, usually standing up, usually reading reports on casualties and shipments. Sienna started setting a place for him. Initially, he ignored it. By the 4th day, he sat down. By the 2nd week, they were eating dinner together every night. They didn't talk about the business. They talked about movies. They debated the best pizza in Chicago. Dante insisted on Pequod's. Sienna was a Lou Malnati's loyalist. They talked about her dreams of opening a bakery, and his childhood spent trying to outrun his father's shadow. It was domestic. It was dangerous. It was a lie. Sienna was falling for him. She knew it was Stockholm Syndrome, or trauma bonding, or just plain stupidity. But when he looked at her across the table, the hardness in his face melting away to reveal a tired, lonely man, she couldn't help herself. And Dante was terrified. He found himself coming home earlier. He found himself checking the security feeds, not to look for intruders, but just to see where she was in the house. She was a light in his dark world, and he knew that light attracted moths, and in his world, moths had teeth. It was a Friday night. A storm was brewing over Lake Michigan, the wind howling against the stone walls of the estate. Dante was in his office, pouring a glass of amber liquid. Enzo stood before him, looking grim. "The chatter is getting louder," Enzo said. "Volkov isn't backing down. He's telling the other families that you're weak, that you're hiding. He's putting a bounty on the sister." "Let him talk," Dante said, swirling his drink. "Volkov is a rabid dog. He'll make a mistake." "There's something else." Enzo hesitated. "We found a leak." Dante froze. "Where?" "Digital. Someone has been pinging our location. Short bursts. Encrypted, but sloppy. It's coming from inside the network." "Trace it," Dante ordered, his voice cold. "We did," Enzo said. "It's coming from the guest wing." Dante's glass shattered in his hand. "Sienna?" "Her phone." Enzo nodded. "The encrypted one you gave her. Someone installed a mirror app on it before we handed it to her. Or she did it herself." "Impossible," Dante growled. "She doesn't have the skills." Maybe she's not who we think she is, boss. Maybe the waitress thing is the cover. Dante stood up, blood dripping from his hand onto the Persian rug. Stay here. He stormed out of the office, moving through the house like a thunderhead. He found Sienna in the library. She was curled up on a leather armchair, reading a worn paperback. She looked up and smiled when he entered. Hey, I made lasagna. It's in the oven. Give me the phone, Dante demanded, extending his bleeding hand. Sienna's smile faltered. She saw the blood. She saw the look in his eyes, the return of the monster. Dante? What happened? Give me the phone. She reached into her pocket and handed it to him, confused. Dante smashed it against the marble fireplace. The device shattered. Who are you working for? He snarled, advancing on her. Volkov? The feds? Who sent you? What? No one. Sienna backed away, hitting the bookshelf. Dante, you're scaring me. My location was beaconed from that device, Dante yelled, slamming his hand against the shelf next to her head. For 2 weeks. They know exactly where we are. Did you tell them? Did you sell me out? I don't know what you're talking about, Sienna cried, tears spilling over. I only called my mom. That's it. I swear. Dante stared into her eyes. He was a master of detecting lies. He looked for the micro-expressions, the dilation of pupils. He saw nothing but terror and confusion. She was telling the truth. If it wasn't you, Dante whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. Who had access to the phone before I gave it to you? Enzo. And Becca. Becca had been in the room when he grabbed the burner phones from the safe. Becca, who was sent away. Becca, who was jealous. Becca, who had a debt to a drug dealer in the South Side, a dealer who answered to Volkov. Becca, Dante breathed. She didn't just borrow the car, she sold us out. Crash! The sound of glass shattering came from the front of the house, then the unmistakable rhythmic thumping of suppressed automatic fire. Get down! Dante tackled Sienna as the library windows exploded inward. Men in black tactical gear swung through the windows on ropes. Flashbangs detonated, filling the room with blinding white light and a deafening ringing sound. Dante rolled, pulling his gun. He fired blindly into the smoke. Enzo! Dante roared into his comms earpiece. We're breached! Library! Sector 4! There was no answer. Dante grabbed Sienna's arm, hauling her up. Run! To the panic room! Behind the bookcase! I'm not leaving you! Sienna screamed, grabbing a heavy brass statue from the desk. This isn't a debate! Dante shoved her toward the hidden panel. A mercenary emerged from the smoke, raising a rifle. Dante stepped in front of Sienna. The bullet didn't make a sound like in the movies. It made a wet thud. Dante jerked back, grunting, clutching his shoulder. But he didn't fall. He raised his Beretta and put 2 rounds into the attacker's visor. The man dropped. Dante! Sienna screamed. Go! He pushed her into the dark passage behind the bookcase and slammed the mechanism shut, sealing them inside the steel-reinforced safe room just as the library filled with gunfire. The panic room was small, lined with monitors and weapons racks. It was soundproof. The chaos outside was suddenly muffled to a dull hum. Dante slid down the wall, leaving a streak of bright red blood on the white paint. He sat heavily on the floor, his breathing ragged. Sienna fell to her knees beside him. The shoulder of his suit jacket was disintegrated, the fabric matted with blood and bone. Oh, God, oh, God. Sienna hyperventilated, her hands hovering over the wound. It's through and through. Dante gasped, his face pale, sweat beading on his forehead. Missed the artery, I think. You need a doctor, Sienna cried. No doctor, Dante gritted his teeth. We are compromised. If we call for help, they intercept it. You have to do it. Me? I'm a waitress. I serve pancakes. There's a med kit. Dante pointed to a metal cabinet with a shaking hand. Sutures, alcohol, gauze. You have to stop the bleeding, Sienna, or I pass out. And if I pass out, we die. Sienna looked at the wound, then at his eyes. He was fading. The invincible dawn was dying in front of her. She took a deep breath. She slapped her own cheeks to focus. "Okay," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "Okay, I can do this." She grabbed the kit. She ripped open his shirt, buttons flying across the floor. The wound was ugly, a jagged hole in his muscular shoulder. "This is going to hurt," she warned, pouring alcohol over the wound. Dante didn't scream. He just threw his head back against the wall and let out a guttural growl, the veins in his neck bulging. Sienna worked. Her hands were covered in his blood. She packed the wound with clotting gauze. She threaded the needle. She stitched him up, her movements jerky but effective. "Talk to me," Sienna demanded, trying to keep him conscious as she worked. "Tell me something real. No Mafia cryptic crap. Tell me something real." Dante looked at her through half-lidded eyes. He looked at the blood on her hands. His blood. She was saving him. "I wanted to be an architect," Dante whispered, his voice slurring slightly, "before my father died. I wanted to build things, not break them." Sienna tied off the last stitch. She taped the bandage down. She sat back, wiping her forehead with her forearm, smearing blood on her face. "You're good," Dante murmured. He reached out with his good hand, his cold fingers touching her cheek. "You're incredible." The adrenaline was crashing. The room was small. The air was thin. Sienna leaned into his touch. She was terrified, covered in blood, and trapped in a box with a dying warlord. And yet, she had never felt more connected to another human being. "You saved me," Sienna whispered. "We're even." Dante smiled weakly. He leaned forward. She didn't pull away. His lips brushed hers. It wasn't a passionate movie star kiss. It was a desperate, bloody seal of a pact. It tasted of copper and scotch. "Dante," she breathed against his lips. "Sienna," he whispered back, "if we get out of this, I'm going to burn the world down for you." Suddenly, the monitors on the wall flickered to life. A face appeared on the screen. It was Nikolai Volkov. He was standing in Dante's library, holding a radio. "Dante," Nikolai's voice crackled through the speakers. "I know you are in the rat hole, and I have a surprise. I didn't just bring guns. I brought leverage." The camera panned. Two men dragged a figure into the frame. It wasn't Becca. It was an older couple. Terrified, confused, clad in pajamas. Sienna screamed. It was her parents. "Come out, Dante," Nikolai smiled. "Bring me the sister, or I start executing the in-laws." The air inside the panic room was freezing, but Sienna felt like she was burning alive. On the grainy security monitor, her mother was weeping, and her father stood frozen with a mercenary's gun pressed to his temple. "Open the door!" Sienna screamed, slamming her fist against the steel. "I have to go out there!" Dante grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak, his skin clammy from blood loss, but his eyes were hard. "If you go out there, they die. Then you die." "They'll kill them anyway," Sienna sobbed, turning to him, her hands stained with his blood. "This is my fault. If I hadn't taken that car—" "No," Dante rasped, forcing himself to stand. He leaned heavily against the wall, clutching his bandaged shoulder. "This is Becca. She didn't just borrow the car. She gave Volkov your name. She traded your family for her freedom." The fear in Sienna's stomach evaporated, replaced by a cold, crystalline rage. She wiped her tears. "How do we save them?" Dante limped to a control panel, his fingers hovering over a red button. "I designed this house to be a trap. Protocol 0. It seals the exits and floods the library with halon gas to suppress fire. It removes the oxygen. It puts out flames and people. But my parents, we have 60 seconds before the gas knocks everyone out," Dante said, his voice straining. "We go in with masks. We get the parents. We leave Volkov to choke." He opened a locker, tossing her a gas mask and a snub-nosed revolver. Sienna stared at the heavy metal in her hand. I've never fired a gun. Point and squeeze, Dante commanded, checking his own empty magazine. Keep their heads down while I do the work. You can barely stand, she argued. Dante met her gaze, a faint, grim smile touching his lips. For you, I'll stand. The library door hissed open. Nikolai Volkov turned, grinning beneath the emergency lights. He stood behind Sienna's father, using him as a human shield. 6 mercenaries trained their rifles on the door. Dante stepped out first, feigning defeat. He let his injured arm hang uselessly, his gun lowered. Let them go, Nikolai, you have me. Let the civilians walk. I don't think so, Nikolai sneered, digging the muzzle into Mr. Brooks' temple. I think I will kill the father first, just to see the look on your sister's face. Sienna stepped out from behind Dante. She wasn't wearing the mask yet, hiding it behind her back. She walked straight into the center of the room. You want the sister? Sienna yelled, channeling every ounce of arrogance she had learned from Becca. I'm right here! Look at me! Nikolai laughed. Feisty, just like Dante! Dante! Sienna screamed. Now! Dante slammed his hand onto a hidden panel on the wall. Clang! Steel shutters crashed down over the windows. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by strobing red emergency lights. A loud hiss filled the air as the halon vents blasted open. Mask! Dante roared. Sienna slapped the gas mask over her face and dove behind a heavy oak desk just as the room erupted in gunfire. The mercenaries were coughing immediately, panic setting in as the oxygen vanished. Dante became a phantom in the strobe light. Moving through the haze in his mask, he didn't waste bullets. He moved with brutal efficiency, pistol-whipping the first guard who was clawing at his throat. Sienna peeked over the desk. She saw a man stumbling toward her parents. She raised the revolver, her hands shaking. Point and squeeze. She squeezed. The gun kicked hard, shattering a vase near the man's head. He dove for cover. It was enough. Dante reached her parents. He shoved emergency masks onto their faces. Stay down! Nikolai was the last one standing. Resilient and full of hate, he held his breath, fighting the black spots in his vision. He spotted Dante's back turned as he helped the parents. Nikolai raised his assault rifle. No! Sienna screamed inside her mask. She stood up, leveled the revolver, and didn't think about the law. She thought about the man who had taken a bullet for her. She fired. The bullet struck Nikolai in the leg. He buckled, his shot going wild into the ceiling. Dante spun around. He saw Nikolai on one knee. He saw Sienna with the smoking gun. Dante walked over to the Russian boss. Nikolai gasped, eyes rolling back as the lack of oxygen took hold. Go to hell, he wheezed. I'm already there, Dante said calmly. I'm just the landlord. Dante delivered a single, knockout blow to Nikolai's jaw. The Russian slumped to the floor. Dante keyed a code into the wall. The vents reversed, blasting fresh air into the room. He pulled off his mask, tossing it aside, and walked to Sienna. She was trembling, staring at the gun. He gently took the weapon from her fingers. Ideally, we work on your aim. But that was perfect. Sienna looked at him, then at her parents, who were pulling off their masks, coughing and bewildered. Sienna? Her mother rasped. What? Who is this? Sienna looked at Dante. He was bleeding, battered, his suit in ruins, surrounded by unconscious bodies. He looked like a nightmare. Mom, Dad, Sienna said, her voice shaking but proud. This is Dante. He's my boyfriend. Dante looked at the terrified suburban couple. He straightened. His ruined jacket wiped the blood from his mouth and extended his good hand. Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, Dante said, charming as ever despite the carnage. A pleasure to finally meet you. I apologize for the mess. We're redecorating. Then his eyes rolled back, and the dawn of Chicago collapsed to the floor. 6 months later. The smell of fresh sourdough and espresso filled. The Golden Crumb, now the busiest bakery in Lincoln Park. Sienna was behind the counter, dusting flour off her apron. She looked happy. The shadows of the past were gone, replaced by a radiant glow. The bell above the door chimed. The chatter in the room died down instantly as Dante Murphy walked in. He wore a charcoal suit that fit perfectly, his movement fluid despite the slight stiffness in his left shoulder. He walked to the front of the line, ignoring the stares. "I hear the owner makes the best cannoli in the city." Dante smirked. "She's busy," Sienna smiled, leaning over the counter. "She has a very demanding partner." "Is he?" Dante reached across, taking her hand. His thumb traced the massive diamond ring on her finger. "He's a little possessive," Sienna teased. "And he has a terrible family." Becca was gone, shipped off to a convent in Sicily, stripped of the Murphy name and funds. It was a mercy she barely deserved. "But," Sienna whispered, "he's very protective." "He loves you," Dante said softly, the room fading away until it was just them. "More than his own life." "Ready to go?" he asked. "The jet is waiting. Paris for the weekend." "I have dough to proof," Sienna protested weakly. "Enzo can proof the dough," Dante said. In the back kitchen, Enzo, the terrifying second-in-command of the Chicago outfit, sighed heavily. He tied a baker's apron over his tactical vest and punched a mound of dough. "I hate this job," he muttered. Sienna laughed, untied her apron, and threw it at Enzo. She walked around the counter, taking Dante's arm. They stepped out of the bakery and into the bright Chicago sunlight. She wasn't the waitress anymore. She wasn't the fake sister. She was Sienna Murphy. And she was finally home. And that is the end of Dante and Sienna's intense story. From a simple case of mistaken identity to a full-blown war for survival, Sienna proved that she wasn't just a damsel in distress. She was a queen in the making. And Dante learned that the only thing worth fighting for wasn't territory, but love. What did you think of that ending? Do you think Becca got what she deserved? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this Mafia romance drama, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.